Murder a la Mode is Brian De Palma's first independently directed feature film. It is about a naive young lady, Karen, played by Margot Norton, who is in a relationship with a struggling amateur filmmaker, Christopher, played by Jared Martin. Karen wants to help Chris to raise enough money so he can divorce his wife, while Chris takes on a job of shooting a cheap adult picture in order to financially survive. This film is considered Brian De Palma's lost film, as when it came out in '68, it played in one theater in New York City and then disappeared and became considered lost. However, in 2011, Criterion released it as a bonus feature to De Palma's Blowout. Why Blowout? Because there is a scene in the picture when Dennis France's character watches Murder a la Mode on television. Thus, a nice fit. Murder a la Mode also stars frequent De Palma actors William Finley and Jennifer Salt. This picture is really weird. It is told, from what I remember, in three perspectives of three different characters. So at first, when you see something that doesn't make sense, for example, when a random character appears from nowhere and does something odd, De Palma soon cuts to a different perspective of the same larger story, but this time we follow a different character, thus now understanding that random moment we saw before. This method of storytelling is both interesting because in a way it works and makes the picture engaging, but in another way the film ends up being as confusing as it was before, because elements of the story are still not explained. This film has a memorable opening credit photo sequence, and some great shots and mise-en-scène, but once again, even from the start of the film, a murder happens, but then that character who was just murdered is still alive as the picture progresses, and then at the end of the film, that character is murdered again, but not in the same way as at the start of the film. Also, at the start of the film, we are set up to understand that the story of a girlfriend trying to help her boyfriend to raise enough money to divorce his wife is a movie, as we see an unknown director telling the scenario to an actress who he is filming. Whereas later in the film, this same scenario turns out to be real. What? And to further confuse the audience, there is a madman running around, played by William Finley, who is obsessed with performing practical jokes on people, and there is a very long narrative section of Murder a la Mode where Finley runs around with a mysterious suitcase. An extremely odd and funny section of the film. When the picture gets to its final scene and climax, it also makes absolutely no sense. At least to me it didn't. If anybody gets it, please explain it to me in the comments below. Anyway, Murder a la Mode was De Palma's first suspense picture, with his next one only being 5 films later in '73, being Sisters. Murder a la Mode is filled with one of De Palma's favorite obsessions, peeping, which he later incorporated in Greetings, Hi Mom, and Sisters, to name a few examples. In Murder a la Mode, the director or producer of the adult film, Jared Martin is working on, brings girls to his bed and has a hidden camera peeping and recording the scene from the upper floor. This element later ends up being part of the whole intrigue of the film, in some complicated and unclear way. Did I mention that the film was really random as well? As I understand, De Palma received funding for this film from some bank, and in order to advertise this bank in the film, there's a completely random scene in the picture that doesn't have anything to do with any part of the story whatsoever that happens in a bank. The character Tracy, played by Andra Ackers, comes to a bank to collect some money. With no point at all, the bank manager starts to have a lengthy random conversation with Tracy about the differences between a modern bank of today and a bank in the old days.
Today, it's different. You never imagined the riffraff they allow in banks nowadays. And not only that, but you realize that they allow these young pups just out of high school to handle money.
Tracy tries to get out of this conversation as much as the audience do of this scene. And that's Murder a la Mode. What do you think about Brian De Palma's first feature film? Were you confused as I was? If you love Brian De Palma, check out this peculiar film. Or if you just like weird movies, check it out as well. But otherwise, I wouldn't bother with it. BlumenFalck Film Talk runs every Friday. Currently, we have this show of ours running called Context and Craft, where we review and analyze forgotten, obscure, rare, or even popular movies. But it's always something interesting. So subscribe to be notified when a new episode comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you next Friday.